Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the 11th session of the IAN Knowledge Series. I'm Kanchi Daiya from the Indian Angel Network, and we are delighted to host this session for you today. I see many new participants registering for this session and joining us today. Quite a few growth stage companies. So, for those of you joining us for the first time today, this is a series of sessions we host every Friday at 4 p.m. IST. In our last B2B session, which was on sales and pricing strategies for early stage businesses, we discussed the 0 to 1 journey. So how do you get your first few customers and align your sales team? We also discussed how to decide the price of your offering, retain customers, and prepare for scale. Today's session focuses on the journey beyond. So how do you scale your B2B business in India? And what are the strategies for you that you can use for growth globally? As a founder or leader, how do you create excitement in your team? And what are the newer strategies for sales and service? So let's get to it. It is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished and extremely accomplished speaker for the day, the ever so humble Mr. Ajai Chowdhry. Mr. Ajay, one of the 6 founder members of HCL, began an exciting journey more than 4 decades ago with a dream to give India its very own microcomputer. The sheer clarity of vision and hard work led to a revolution and laid the foundation for the Indian IT industry, taking India to the league of major economies of the world. In 2011, the Honorable President of India conferred Mr. Ajay Chowdhry with the prestigious Padma Bhushan, one of India's highest civilian honors, as a recognition of his consistent contribution in building the IT industry of the nation. Mr. Ajay is now focusing on incubating entrepreneurship by supporting startups. He is on the board of Indian Angel Network, on the investment committee of the IN Fund, and has also been actively mentoring and investing in startups. He continues to give back to society through his in-depth experience and understanding of the industry. So without further ado, I'll now request Mr. Ajay to share his words of wisdom. Thank you, Mr. Ajay, for your precious time today. Over to you.
Thank you, Kanchi. It's a pleasure to be among our own friends from various parts of IIN and all the startups who are part of the family. And what better to spend time with the family than anybody else? I do give time to so many people, but whenever it comes to IIN, I'm very happy to give as much time as I can. Well, we started out HCL in 1975-76, and it was a time when the country was under an emergency, and we started with a figure of just 1.86 lakhs. 6 of us put together money. Somebody borrowed money, somebody sold a car, somebody took Provident Fund. We put it all together. And our dream was to take the microprocessor and change the world. And to make that dream happen, obviously, we wanted to create a computer company from scratch. We wanted to design our own computers and we wanted to manufacture them in the country. Those days, if you wanted to start a company, you needed a license to start a company and you needed a license to manufacture. We had neither. We were a startup. So to actually get started, we initially decided to do some marketing and trading and create some funding. So what we did was that we started to initially pick up calculators from others like Televista, brand them or sell them under their brand. And then we created enough funding in the next 1 year. As we were creating funding, we were also looking at how to crack this whole problem of not having a license. And so we decided that let's go and see if there are other people who got licenses and are they willing to partner with us. Just so happens that the UP government had a license which they were sitting with, and they didn't know how to get started. And it just so happened that we went and formed a joint sector company with them, and we called it Hindustan Computers Limited. Interestingly, those days, if you wanted to call your company Hindustan, you either had to be a very large company like Hindustan Lever, or you needed to be a public sector government-owned company. But since we were 26% owned by the government, we got approval for the name Hindustan. And why was it so important to get this name? The reason why we wanted to get this name was that it sounded larger than life. Okay, so if a salesperson from our company flashed a card which said Hindustan, it looked big. And that was our objective. So, always when you're looking at naming your company, do keep in mind what you really want to achieve. And naming a company is very critical. Now, I've been part of this great journey of the IT industry from very early days, starting with hardware in 1976, and then going on to software as we helped create the software IT industry in the country, which went from 60 million to 60 billion in 2 decades, and is now poised to reach 350 billion by 2025. And most of the companies who are part of this were created as first-time entrepreneurs, like HCL. First-time entrepreneurs. Very few, like TCS and Wipro, were owned by other companies. Now, one of the most interesting things that's happening in the country, and is something that I'd like all of you to note, is that a lot of times products are developed for the developed markets. But everyone has woken up to this whole opportunity that 86% of the market lies outside the developed market. That's where 86% of the population is. India, China, Africa, etc., etc. And a beautiful book was written on this by a friend of mine, Professor Mahajan. He wrote this book and said, you need to design and create products, not for the developed market alone, but for the developing market, where 86% of the population sits. And his whole book was called 86%. So this whole idea that you need to start looking at these markets, because if you design for the 86% of the market, you'll still be able to get to the 14%, because even the 14% has a lower end, middle end, which may appeal for your products. So let's say you design a medical device, which is good for the rural market in India or the second tier, third tier market. It may be very, very good for point of service business in America. So I think that's the whole idea. Start to look at this bottom of the pyramid market. And if you see, a lot of global companies have set up R&D in India. Why have they done that? The reason why they have done it is that they are starting to look at this 86% market. So I'll sort of take you through some of the journey that we've had from 0 to $9 billion of HCL. And you may want to pick up a few points as I go along. So cut to 1980, we were a mere 3 crore, 2.53 crore company. And we happened to meet some people from the Economic Development Board of Singapore in a flight. And they said that we are just launching our new IT strategy for Singapore. And they said, what do you guys do? So we said, we manufacture computers. So they said, we would like you to look at manufacturing computers in Singapore. So we said, look, guys, we've just started and it's too early for us to look at going global. We don't even understand the global market. So they said, no, we are also just starting out. There's hardly any manufacturing in Singapore. Why don't you have a look? And we'll give you offer an offer which you cannot refuse. It'll be so good. So he said, okay, let's have a look. So we decided that instead of just rushing into going into Singapore, and we were a bit scared that we were very small and would we have the enough money to do what we needed to do. We said, okay, let's just go and do some market research. So instead of hiring a market research company, which we could ill afford to hire, two of us went there and spent maybe a month meeting a lot of small and medium enterprises. And we created this questionnaire of what are their needs and how can we meet their needs. Okay. And what we discovered interestingly was that everyone said, yeah, we want to buy a computer, but we don't know how to use it. And we don't know how to actually make it work for our company because we are very small. We were only looking at small and medium-sized companies. So one of the ideas that struck us was that there is clearly a requirement, not for computers, but computerization. So we sat and defined what is computerization, working on that market research that we did. And we discovered that we needed to provide hardware, we needed to provide software specifically written for them. We needed to actually train them how to use it. If their people, they didn't have enough people, we would have to lend them people in the beginning. And we would need to provide them with excellent solution for them to learn themselves. So we put this whole thing together and we said, we will offer you the hardware, which we will make in Singapore. And we decided to set up a software development factory in Madras. Those days it was called Madras. And we would actually do the system study in Singapore, send it back to India, and then get the software made. Now, this kind of thing was never done by anybody else before. We were probably one of the earliest people to set up a software factory back in India. But that was what we decided to do. And when we went to launch in Singapore, we went and hired a very large advertising agency. And we put up full page ads. And we said, here we are, India's top company, giving you computerization instead of computers. And we laid down exactly what we would deliver as computerization, which consisted of hardware, software. Instead of giving training manuals, we gave them cassettes to hear so they could actually see how to operate the computer. And so, unfortunately, no connectivity existed between India and Singapore those days. So we had to actually physically ship software from Singapore, India to Singapore. It used to take a little bit of time. But then we gave ourselves a target. We said, okay, in the first 6 months, we are going in there with so little money. RBI never used to allow us to take too much money out of the country. So we said our target is $1 million in 6 months. We then put together a very aggressive sales team. And with a lot of self-belief, we entered the market. We put out these full page ads and we got phenomenal response. We had so much response that we could not handle. And so we actually got going. So fundamentally, I have this great belief that whether you have the resources or not, if you have aspirations, you can succeed. And this is what my guru used to teach in Michigan, Dr. C.K. Prahlad. He used to have this formula which he called A is greater than R. A stands for aspiration, R stands for resources. So if you have the aspirations, resources will happen. So really in flat 6 months, we got $1 million of business. And then Singapore became our window to the world and helped us dramatically to improve our business in India. Because we started bragging that if we can sell our hardware in Singapore, our hardware must be good. So that's how we started in 1976. And in 10 years, in 86, we became the #1 computer company in India, overtaking all the large business houses who were in the business of computing, like the Sarabhais, the Tatas, the TCMs, and everybody. Anyway, that's history. What I would like to mention is that when markets are at an early stage and you have a unique product or a service, you may have only scratched the surface. Okay. So you should not go by the standard marketing rules, which say, with the conventional thinking is if that market is a $4 billion market and growing at 20%, you will also grow at 20%. I don't think that's the way to look at it at all. You should say that if the market is early days and there is a huge market, it doesn't mean you should go at 20%, you should grow faster. And if you've created a breakthrough product, then it becomes your job to create the market. And which is really what we did in computers. We created the market. And when you create the market, you become the leader. And when you become the leader, you get a much higher market share. Right? So that's what you need to look at in this B2B business. You have the opportunity to have the largest market share if you go forward and if you grow faster than that conventional thinking of 20%. So now this is exactly what we did in the PC business. Although it's not a B2B business, we also did business in creating the whole market for mobile phones in this country. And we brought in Nokia to India. And we said, if we want to market Nokia in this country, we should do it differently. So we changed the rules of the game in India. And we created a distribution model, which was pretty much like an FMCG model. It was pretty much like selling soap. So we said, okay, we need to sell phones all over the country and we needed to do it differently. And this whole model has been actually written about in a particular book. But the issue was that we created an 8,000 crore market for phones. And that's how we looked at unconventional ways of doing things. So when you go about creating market for your products, don't think always conventionally. Think unconventionally. Think out of the box. Think of ways that you can reach your customer. And at the end of the day, there is a customer who's out there waiting for your product. You don't know who it is, who that person is, but you need to identify that market. So if you are leaders and visionaries, I would like to believe that some of you are like that. Don't dream small, dream big. Because if you dream big, you will achieve something that you've never thought of. And if you are afflicted by a disease which I call optimism, you will find the path and the door and the keys of the door will open up the dreams for your organization. So that is what is more important. And sometimes optimism has to extend itself to the team. And I call it infectious optimism. You need to infect optimism in your whole founding team and make it think bigger. In HCL, the collective dream of the 6 founders created a leadership position, and it is shared today by 150,000 HCLites with a $9 billion revenue. Now, another aspect of leading the company, and all of you are founders, so leading the company is that you need to trust your team. including employees, partners, stakeholders, whose thoughts and ideas make the company. Today, of course, Indians have a lot more confidence to grow globally because there are so many references out there of Indians being successful from India. And of course, the story of software is very well known. But it's not just software. You look at automobile components and you look at foundries and you look at pharmaceuticals. The list is becoming longer and longer. In the last 5 years, from being the second largest importing companies for mobile phones, we have become the second largest exporting country for mobile phones. So it's all on how big we think and what we want to achieve. Okay. Now, most entrepreneurs who are strong technically tend to believe that if the product is great, customers will come. My God, it's most further from the truth. The reality is different. You must focus on your go-to-market strategy for B2B sales. Get experienced salespeople in your domain, and in addition, look at new ways of selling. Now, a lot of startups have this issue that I can do the selling myself. Why do I need to hire salespeople? And that is where you go wrong, because if you don't have great salespeople in your organization, you will find that your numbers really won't happen. And a lot of times, salespeople are the ones that create a company. So give them, get the best, get a few of them, get the best, and don't hire anybody who's temporary or part-time. Have full-time people, give them, if required, give them stock options and get them in and attract the best. Now, sales is also changing in a lot of ways. B2B sales earlier used to be, okay, I have to reach 500 prospects in 5 cities. Therefore, how many people, salespeople do I need based on the number of meetings that you can do in a day? And based on that, you worked out, I need 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever. And similarly for global sales. But the model has been changing quite a lot in the last 8 to 10 years. And one of the models that is used very strongly by all B2B sales companies is to have an inside sales organization. So you should have a call center type of organization within your organization, which sits with your target list of customers, calls them up, finds out what they need, when do they need, and fix meetings for your salespeople so that the salespeople don't go and waste time making cold calls. They actually do hot calls and they sort of start to get from scratch, get going early. Now, that is definitely something that is happening in a reasonably large way today. But sales and service are being redefined due to the communications revolution that we're sitting with today. What is it based on? It's based on content. It is based on targeted reach. And it is all based on going away from the old scattershot approach to sales and service. Till yesterday, all B2B sales were done by salespeople. But now, authentic, strong stories create a link between companies and customers. There is a company called Atlassian. They sell tools to develop software. Okay. And they're very famous now. When they started about 8-10 years ago, they were quite small, but they have this product called Jura, which is very famous. They don't have a single salesperson. In about 3 to 4 years, they were $100 million company. And today, I think they are around $1 billion. They still don't have a single salesman. How do they do it? Look at their website, understand their strategy. And what they did was very interesting. They would give you a sachet of software, just like you buy a sachet for your any product that you buy for your hair. You want to clean your hair, you buy a shampoo, it comes in a sachet. So you want to try a sachet of that shampoo. What they did was that they gave away sachets online for you to use the software. And once they hooked you, they would keep on going step by step to get you into becoming their customer. So now that you've established yourself in your own domestic market, how do you scale? So you need to look at scaling. But before we go there, I'd like to tell you about some reading material on this, which I have given to Kanchi, and she will display it so that people can read as to how to get to understand what is this new way of selling.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Ajay. I request you to please share it on the screen, and I'll also put the name in the chat box so everyone has access to it and can copy it from there.
Or you can do it later, doesn't matter.
You will share it in the chat box. So
yeah, do that.
I can mention the name right now. It's
Yeah.
the new of sales and service. How to use agile selling, real-time customer engagement, data, content, and storytelling to grow your business by David Scott. So I've put the name in the chat box, and we'll share the picture of the book towards the end of the session as well.
So I think I would strongly recommend you reading this because it will add a lot of value to what I mentioned just now. Now, once you've established, that's the book. It's a wonderful book. If you read it, you will find that you learn a lot about how agile selling has changed the way people sell to B2B customers. Okay.
Thank you, Anu.
Now that you've decided that you want to scale, the first thing that you should do is to scale in the domestic market itself. So don't just go straight into the global market. Look at establishing yourself in the domestic market. And how do you define scaling, for example? If you add your expenses, sales, marketing, R&D, etc., at the same rate you grow revenue, then your business does not scale. If additional revenue needs smaller and smaller addition to expenses, then great. Your business scales. If it means less and less money and more revenue, that is scaling. So I think that way the business starts to make money. Now, as you prepare to scale and go global, your obvious first list of countries has to be those that offer the potential for your product and service. And if supposing you need certain certifications to enter that market, please provide for those certifications and plan for those certifications and approvals. So for example, if you are a medtech type of startup and you need to enter Europe and US, you need CE certification and you need FDA certification. So those kind of things you should plan for. In a typical normal software product or etc., you may not need it. But in case of a hardware product, definitely you will need certain certifications. The most important part of going global is to get your team engaged with the challenge and the excitement and the adventure of being part of your global plan. I just want to take you back to when we were starting HCL. We wanted to hire the top MBAs in the country. And we were nobodies. We were just a startup, no revenue. And when we went to IIM Calcutta to hire, we said, we'll give you the highest salary in the country. And that time, the highest salary was 2,000 rupees. So that's what we offered. It was the highest salary in the country. But they asked a question. They said, why should we join you? And we said, you're not getting a job when you join HCL. You're joining an adventure. And that's really how you should excite your team when you want to go global. It's the excitement and the adventure of going global. That is what you need to do. And you need to have the passion as you go global. You need to pay a lot of attention to processes. And of course, quality is a given. You can't go to the global market unless you have an absolutely very high quality product. Okay. When I was doing my course in Michigan, there was a case study of a software company called Intuit. And in this case study, the Intuit management decided that for their software, they will not charge anything for maintenance after the 1-year warranty. So what did they do? Why did they do that? Oracle and a whole bunch of other companies were actually charging very high rates for maintenance. What Intuit did was they did exactly what the trapeze artists do in a circus, where a trapeze artist, when they're there in a circus and you have a safety net below, if that safety net ensures that if they fall, they don't get injured. But in the case of Intuit, they removed the safety net. They said there will be no maintenance charge for software. That means it must work the first time it goes to the customer. And since it was a home accounting software, ladies at home were going to use it. They did not want a product that had bugs. Okay, so interesting way to look at quality. Now, when we were, sort of starting out very early days, in 1990, we formed a joint venture with Hewlett Packard. And we were thought of as the best sales company in the country for B2B. And if you ask anybody in the industry, they will say, yes, HCL had the best salespeople in the country. But one thing we missed on, and that was process. We had a lot of passion, but we didn't have processes. We didn't understand quality to that extent. But having worked with HP for 6-7 years, we really imbibed a lot of knowledge about processes, quality, and that became very essential when we went global. So there are so many ways to go global depending on the segment of the market that you want to address. So select your distribution sales strategy carefully. This can be a mix of direct or through different distributors all over the world for different segments. So for example, for one particular segment, you may have a system integrator. From another segment, you may have a distributor. For another segment, you may have a very different kind of a distributor. So you need to look at different segments of the market and decide your strategy. And one of the greatest pieces of strategy when you go global is to also look for advisors in each country. If you can have good advisors in each country who understand the market in that country, in your domain, you will have a much easier time because that advisor will be able to guide you and connect you to a lot of customers or prospective customers. So I think it adds a lot of credibility to you when you have a great advisor in US and Europe. And I think another model of working in these countries is that you could white label your product. So you don't sell it under your brand. You give out licenses and give to OEMs, as they are called, original equipment manufacturers, and enter the global market with that strategy. So I think there are many, many ways to enter the global market. For example, if you have a product that sort of works well with a well-known product, that you may want to go to that company and say, I would like to offer you this product on a white label basis. You brand it your own and sell it. So that's how you actually sort of enter these markets and move very fast. Now there are some very, very unconventional ways of growing also. And one of the most unconventional ways was what we followed in HCL. When we were going to go public in 1999, we wanted to go public in 1999, and we decided that we will go for a listing in New York Stock Exchange in year 2000. But then by year 2000, there were serious problems in America, and the market was not really doing well. But the Indian market was doing well. So we very quickly shifted and decided to list in India. But we were much behind Wipro and Infosys in software because we were originally a hardware company. So we said, okay, since we are late, we should do something totally unconventional. And we said that if we go for a listing with a large amount of backlog of orders in hand, our valuation will dramatically increase. So what did we do? We created a scheme which we offered to our customers in the US. And we said, if you give us a $75 million order, we will give you a part of our company. So it was not employee stock option, it was customer stock option. It's never been heard of. I've never heard anybody else doing it. We did that. And we did that from our own shares. Okay, so we picked up about 7 deals of $75 million. And can you imagine having $500 million of backlog of orders to carry forward when you actually enter the IPO market in India? It was a big deal. And we were subscribed for our IPO many, many times over. I think it was 23 times those days. It has never been heard of for a software company in India. So, as I mentioned earlier, scaling globally means that you've created good process-based organization. Of course, you should be adequately funded for that. And your advisors also play a great role in mentoring and helping you, creating market connections and entering, etc., etc. So I think one of the critical aspects of being very successful is to have all your metrics worked out very clearly from early days and clearly investing in good IT systems and CRM. A lot of software companies who go abroad don't even have good IT systems, despite the fact that they're software companies. So have a very good IT system, have your own CRM, and ensure that you're working with technology to sell technology. Okay. Now, one area you should also look at is to create recurring revenues. So it's not that every year you start with zero. So if you are in the product business, you have a great opportunity to add services to it. You have a great opportunity to add upgrades to it. You have a great opportunity to add maintenance for it. And you also have an opportunity to do subscription models. So what that does, it creates a recurring model for revenue. I want to come back finally again to one point that I started with, work on creating a great team that has a skin in the game. Most founders are great technically, but have no experience in sales and distribution. So have no issues about inducting all capabilities that you need, whether it's financial, whether it's a good finance person or a good salesperson or a good marketing person. Make them part of your founding team. If they have a skin in the game, I think that you will be a lot more successful. A lot of founders feel, why should I give away stock options to a sales guy? I think if you don't have a sales guy, there is no business. And if there's no revenue or business, there is no company. So, I think all of that is something that you need to very seriously look as you grow in India and abroad. Finally, what I'd like to do is give you a view about how to create a brand. Because branding is an essential part of growth. a lot of times people feel that B2B business doesn't really need branding. You can't be further than the truth. It is actually a requirement. Why is it a requirement? The requirement is because if you go for a listing and if you're in the market with a listed company, you have many stakeholders. Even when you are VC funded, you have many stakeholders. The valuation of your company is completely dependent on how your brand is perceived in the market. Okay, so if you want to catch all your stakeholders, whether they are people that you want to hire, whether they are customers, whether they are shareholders, all stakeholders need to be addressed. So we decided, after many years of having formed HCL, we said our branding is very confused. There are many pieces of HCL. Somebody does applications, somebody makes hardware, somebody does services, somebody does automation. All kinds of businesses were there in HCL. So we said, let's bring it under one umbrella and create a single brand called HCL. So originally we moved away long ago from Hindustan Computers Limited to HCL because we felt that a short name like HCL has more recall value. Incidentally, if you look at HCL and IBM, the letters are just one apart. So after H comes I, right? And so on. So anyway, let me tell you about our branding effort. And can you please put up the slides? There are 2 full-page ads in the beginning.
Anup, request you to please. Yeah.
Yeah, so go to the next. Yeah, go to the next. Go back, please. Go back. So, the first thing that we did when we wanted to create our brand, we said, look, people know a lot about us and there is a tremendous history about the company. So why don't we talk about the history of the company and what have we achieved? So we put out these full page ads. The first one said, you don't have to have more courage when you're young, you have less fear. And in HCL, there's only one thing more important than brain, guts. So fundamentally, what are we really trying to communicate? We are trying to say, this is what HCL is all about through this campaign. This campaign just did not work. People said, yeah, we know HCL. So what? So it didn't work. So we said, okay, let's take the next step. We decided that we will go on television and we decided to be different. So we said, let's do a television campaign, which is very beautiful, technical, never done before. Because our advertising agency somehow convinced us that, you need to use some new technologies. So here we go. That was our first ad on television. Next, please.
Request you to.
Yes, go to the next. Yeah, please start this. This is our first ad.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hey, where's the fire?
I've got a flight to catch.
In this weather, it's not taking off.
With HCL, actually, you can.
The big computer guys?
Aha! HCL's cutting-edge technology helps the world's best airplanes navigate and land in near-zero visibility.
Hey, pal, I owe you one.
Oh, that's my plane. HCL, our numbers do the talking.
So we ended up the ad by saying, what is the size of our company? Why did we say 12,000 crores? Because people really didn't know how big we were. We actually did some research and we asked customers, how big do you think HCL is? Somebody said 5,000 crores, somebody said 3,000 crores, somebody said 10,000 crores. We said, let's go and put it out there, 12,000 crores. That's what we are. Okay. But this ad, as you saw, the two characters that were there in this ad were 0 and 1. And 0 and 1 is very easily associated with computing. But you know, it was too technical for people. It went over their heads. And this was absolutely a flop. People didn't have great memorability about this ad, although it was describing exactly what HCL was in many ways. So we said, okay, what is missing in this ad? And what we found was that this was in a manner an IQ ad, very, very brainy, technical, etc., etc. But it had nothing to catch the emotion in people, the heartstrings part. And heartstrings part is very important when you want to communicate. So we changed the strategy totally, and we said, now we will create EQ ads, emotional quotient ads, as we call them. So just see the next ad. Please show the first one. Yeah.
Abin, thank you. So, computer guy, yeah?
I work for HCL.
Oh.
What about you?
I'm an investment banker.
We're the ones connecting the stock exchange to you. And the stock market just crashed.
Crashed.
We also design software for making cars safer. And you're a guess. You see that bank?
Yeah?
It runs on our technology. Project to there.
HCL again. It's running on a car battery?
Thanks, I'll get off now. My ride's here.
That cow's your ride.
Actually, I've got to go overseas for a life sciences project. Thanks for the ride, Mrs. Banker. By the way, that...
It's a bull, not a cow.
From India to across the world, HCL's technology touches lives everywhere.
So you see that it's very light, it's very emotional, it has got a lot of humor, and it really, really became very successful. So we said, if these two characters are being so successful, Mr. HCL and Mr. Banker, why don't we do the next series of ads, which also involve the same, but we also added a bit of English to it. So let's go to the next ad.
ओह पाजी पाजी छोटा सा बिजनेस था हमारा आपकी आईटी ने तो
हमें इंटरनेशनल बनानी है
थैंक यू अब आप लोग दुनिया भर की हेल्थ इंडस्ट्री में भी छा रहे हैं ग्रेट जॉब
You're the dudes that designed this game.
No.
Yeah, man, and the chip inside too.
Hey, our sky's a lot safer thanks to you guys.
Mr. HCL.
Mr. Banker, can I have my jacket back?
That's... All this while I was wondering
Oh, one sec. Maybe you should just leave it on. It gets a little cold here.
I was wondering, how did you manage this?
Oh, hi, you
Hi.
work for HCL? I have this new Miley. You just want to...
From India to across the world, HCL's technology touches lives everywhere.
So that's how we actually created the brand HCL. And this campaign ran for a couple of years and it became exceedingly successful. And so we did market research before the ad and we did market research post the ad. And let's just have a look at the results. Next page, please. So that's what, when we started out, our spontaneous awareness was around 50, much lower than Infosys and Wipro, etc. And then when we ended up in 2009, we were the highest in terms of brand recall, above all other companies who were competing with us. So that's how you actually go about creating brand. This is just one example. You don't need to do it on television. Today, the market is very different. You can use social media, multimedia, all kinds of things. So a mix of different media is what I would recommend if I were to look at creating the brand. But television offers a very clear way to stand apart. And if you actually mix television with social media, etc., that can be quite powerful, because the print media has become less and less used today. But any case, those are many things that you can learn about branding, but this is just a little example of how to create a brand. So with that, I'm done, Kanchi. I've sort of spent pretty much about 45, 55 minutes with the team. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Mr. Ajay. That was indeed extremely insightful. Truly appreciated. So sure, with your permission, we can now take a few questions from our participants on the call. I noticed we've received a few, so we'll start with them. But to our participants on the call, please feel free to leave questions via the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen, and request Mr. Ajay to help answer them. So the first question is actually in continuation to the last topic that we discussed, which is advertising. The founder is asking, what is the cheapest way of doing the best advertising for a company which will eventually give us loyal customers? You've touched upon it, but...
You know, it's a mix of things that you need to do. As I said, today, social media has become very, very important. And I think it depends on the product, the characteristics of the product, the type of customers that you're addressing. So it all depends on that. You need to take a view that if you want to go for certain, you know, you want to create a brand for recall, etc., you need a mix of, you need a multimedia campaign, which could be a mix of television and social media, etc.
Right. Thank you so much. Our next question is for branding and marketing. So we're asking, is it different, SaaS-based branding and marketing, is it different from hardware product selling? So between SaaS-based products such as branding and marketing and hardware product selling, is it different?
Yes, it is, because the segments that you're going after are completely different. And for certain segments, you don't need any advertising. And for certain segments, you definitely need branding and advertising. So you need to take a view as to, based on the segment that you're going after, you go after doing branding or not. Now, if, for example, if you have very clearly known customers, let us say you're addressing your business to the pharmaceutical industry, or you're addressing your business to 5 industries, then why would you spend money on advertising? You know those 5 industries. You make a list of all the prospective customers in those 5 industries and just attack them directly. Okay? So you don't need to spend money and time on advertising and branding.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is in terms of how do you start exporting with hardware? What are the 3 steps initially that you feel are crucial?
As I said, for hardware products, medical products, etc., first look at the certifications that are required. And don't look at the certification process when you've actually, done a lot of selling in India. Look at the certification process literally on day 1. When you design in India, design it for the world, if that's your objective. So your first design itself should take care of very high quality, certification level quality, what is required to get certifications like CE or FDA, and ensure that that's in the design itself. Because, for example, a lot of electronic products in India are designed without thinking about EMI, EMC as it's called, magnetic interferences, etc. Those are not taken into account when people design. But if you don't take that into account, you will not get certification.
Thank you. The next question is, if a product is developed for the global market, shall the founders still go ahead and start marketing in India or take it globally directly? And they're clarifying that it is a SaaS-based solution.
If it's a SaaS-based solution, and if you think that the uh, early adopters are likely to be global, then sure enough, start looking at the Far East, etc., to start with, and then go on to the US and Europe. Because reality of the matter is that wherever you are sitting today, you can market it globally. And as I said, if you create this whole idea of having great salespeople sitting on a phone and doing inside sales and also actual sales, you really don't need to even open an office to start with.
The next question is, what are the few things that you think one should look at when hiring a salesperson initially and in the 10 to 100 business journey? Oh, sorry, I think they meant salesperson initially. So what do you look for in a salesperson initially and in the 10 to 100 business journey?
Always hire the best salespeople that you can hire, whether it's the beginning of the journey or the middle of the journey, or when you've really grown. It doesn't matter, because the salesperson will give you returns very fast if he or she is good. If you hire a second-class salesperson, it's not going to help your business. So I think be very strong in terms of hiring the right salespeople. And that goes for the whole team, actually. Never hire second-class people. Hire the best people that you can hire with what you have in mind. And don't be scared to give away part of your company as a stock option or a founding option.
All right, thank you so much. So the next question is, most of the Indian SMBs are not offered high tech and new tech due to the cost of serving them. So if you could guide on how one could reach Indian SMBs with productized service and software, something like you did in Singapore, using inside sales and still prevent regional partners not leaving.
I didn't get that question fully, actually. I think the whole concept that you're talking about is reaching the small and medium industry, right? And small and medium businesses, you can directly sell also. You have an inside sales organization because the numbers are very large. So you may decide that certain territory or certain number of customers you will handle directly, and the rest you will go through distributors or system integrators, which becomes a much better strategy rather than trying to do everything yourself.
All right. Thank you. Another question is, any quick tips to transition the customer behavior, one-time payment and AMC model to a subscription model? It is a very common challenge when selling in India.
I understand what you're saying, that a lot of people don't want to do subscription models, but I think you need to work out a strategy by which you can convince the customer that it is better for him or her to have a subscription model, because the subscription model has maintenance included in that.
Right. So another question is more toward branding. So when do you start branding in your startup journey? Do you wait until you have scaled, or do you start from the very beginning?
It depends on the product. As I said earlier, look, branding is expensive. So there is no sense in starting on day one at all. You need to be very careful that you do branding at a time when it's absolutely essential. Because when you want to really scale like crazy, that's when you do branding. So for example, you look at Baiju, right? Baiju was not even visible 3 years ago. Today, they are very, very visible. And what have they really done? They have taken advantage of the COVID situation by growing like crazy. And that they have done by phenomenal amount of branding and advertising all over the country. So it's a question of the stage of your company. It's also the question of the market at a particular time. Baiju saw the opportunity now. Unacademy saw the opportunity now. So they have done phenomenal amount of branding and advertising. And they basically are a consumer brand. They're not a B2B brand. So in consumer brand, you need to do a whole bunch of more advertising than you need to do in the B2B brands.
Fantastic, thank you. In today's age, especially the new normal way, where is the go-to-market strategy for B2B SaaS heading? So you've touched upon it briefly by giving examples of companies that are doing it, but if, in case that you'd like to add something to this.
I think I've already answered that question earlier.
Yeah. All right. So, what would be the ingredients of a subscription model for a PaaS, and how do you identify a target group for marketing?
It's very specific to your particular area of service. And I think you need to adopt a model by which entry becomes easy for a customer. Make it easier for the customer to enter. So as I was talking about Atlassian earlier, they did this whole strategy of making the entry easier. So they did this whole sachet model of software. So you need to, if you need to break up your service into multiple pieces and you want them to test a part of your service, then give them that part of the service at a very low entry price and get them enticed to enter and start using your product.
Okay, this is another interesting one, given we're targeting different markets. So how do you create different prices for India and for different Western markets?
Very interesting. You must have different pricing strategies. Look, the US market, European market, etc., have many more conditionalities associated and many more additional costs associated with marketing your products there. So therefore, definitely you need to take those costs into account. There are certain certification costs and other costs. The cost of sales, for example, in the United States is many X times the cost of sales in India. So therefore, your pricing strategy has to be very clearly not based on cost, but based on what the market can bear. So you need to see that where do you want to position yourself in terms of your competition? And what will enable new prospects to become customers at that particular price point? And over a period of time, as your product gains acceptance, you can slowly start increasing the prices.
Lovely, thank you so much. The next question is, what was the IPR strategy adopted by HCL?
IPR. Well, IPR in terms of everything that we did right from the beginning, we planned it thoroughly. We actually registered the brand HCL and we did everything that we did. We used IPR for it. And wherever we developed a new product, we patented it. So that's something that we continue to do. Now I'm not deeply involved in the business, so I'm sure that they're continuing to do that. But that's something that is a very important part of running a business, because you must be aware where you should have brand names to be registered, your products to be registered, all of that you need to understand. Copywriting, etc., etc.
Another question is on teams. So how were you able to arrive at a decision between the four founders? Were there any difference of opinions to lead to resolve it? So I guess it's more in terms of founders' decision-making and resolve conflicts.
You see, what you try and do, I mean, I must tell you that always there will be conflicts. And there were conflicts between us also. So it's not that it doesn't happen. It will happen. It's human nature. But what you try and do is define the actual KRAs for each separately. So you decide that the first, the Mr. A will do marketing and sales, Mr. B will look at finance, Mr. C will look after operations, and Mr. A plus plus will be the CEO. And there always has to be a single leader. Don't try and do this that 2 in a box and 3 in a box that a lot of people try. And people say, okay, everybody is equal. It doesn't work that way. You need to have one single leader. So try and do that and avoid as much as you can in terms of any issues between founders. It's likely to happen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next question is actually a follow-up to the pricing one where you gave the suggestions of how do you price in India and globally or differential pricing. So the question is, how do you then justify region-wise differential pricing to a single customer who is a global corporation?
It's always a challenge, but you need to tell them that, look, our pricing is actually, original pricing is actually for the US. We are pricing it low for a developing country like India. And we followed the same model that Oracle follows. So Oracle has a much different price for the developed market and a lower price for the developing market because it's all depends on PPP. Okay, and that is what you need to explain through the model to say purchasing power parity is what you decides the price. So how much does it cost to buy a hamburger in America? And how much does it cost to buy a hamburger in India is totally different. It doesn't get multiplied by 70 when you actually buy a hamburger in India.
So many questions. The next question.
I think we'll have to stop in the next 1 or 2.
Yeah,
because we're nearly done, I think, in terms of time.
So we'll take one last question and
sure.
Close. If you were a startup today, which business would you start? Name top 3 opportunity areas for the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh my God, that's a very open question. I think there are so many new age businesses that are emerging today. And I'd like to name some of them, which interest me personally. Definitely, there is a very large opportunity in electronics today. I come from that particular background, so I always tell people, design and make in India for India. So there's a huge market out there for electronic products. For example, you want to do EdTech type of business and you want to give content to every person all over the country. What do you really need to do? You need to have very high bandwidth for connectivity and you need to have a device, right? Now, this device today, the little phone, is not good enough for teaching because the screen is too small. So can you create a product similar to a phone, but having 10-inch screen and a price point of 2,000 rupees? Just see the size of the market. That's really what it's all about. You need to create a new market if you want to make a difference. So that's how, I would define in electronics. Now, let's look at some other areas that are really large emerging areas today. MedTech devices is a very large emerging area. Huge opportunity because literally every piece of equipment that you see around you in hospitals, etc., whether they are MRIs or X-ray machines, etc., everything is important. So we need to, that's a huge market for us to address as a country. Then if you want to look at something really futuristic, how about flying cars? Because the market for flying cars will be there 4 to 5 years ago. We are a very crowded country. Okay, so I would look at some interesting opportunities like this. India has opened up space, for example. Okay, so there's a lot of satellite companies that are emerging in India today. Okay, so, the model has changed globally for space exploration, with the launch of companies like SpaceX. And SpaceX has reusable rockets, unlike what NASA used to have. So now you can transport people to the moon. So transportation, movement, all of that will change with electric coming in a very big way. So you need to look at electric as a very interesting opportunity. You need to look at electric flying cars. You need to look at electric cars. You need to look at very fast moving vehicles which could transport you from Bombay to Pune in 26 minutes. And those are kind of things that are being done by companies like Hyperloop. So, you need to keep reading and you need to keep seeing where is this future opportunity and try and see where you want to pitch your tent.
Fantastic. The world is your oyster, I guess. You just have to get creative and looking for solutions. Yeah. So on behalf of all the participants on the call today, I'd sincerely like to thank you, Mr. Ajai, for your guidance and valuable insights. It was quite a power-packed Q&A over a short duration, so thank you so very much. It was an incredible session with some great takeaways. A big, big, big thank you once again. For all our participants on the call, our next session is on financial reporting and scaling up next Friday, 4th December at 4 p.m. So please feel free to sign up using the registration link that is going to be shared in the chat box in just a moment. Okay, so you should have received the registration link for the next session as well. And of course, if you do have any questions in the meantime or are looking to raise capital, please feel free to write to me. My email address is kanchi@indianangelnetwork.com. There were a couple of founders who asked the question and answers to get Mr. Ajai's contact details. So I will share, if you write to me, I'll be happy to connect you to Mr. Ajai with his permission. Yeah, I'm going to leave my email address in the chat box as well, so y'all can just take it from there. And that brings us to the close of this session. Thank you once again, Mr. Ajai, and to all our participants for joining us today. Have a great weekend and see you next week.